The world of Red Dead 2 is so detailed that even the NPCs, those characters most people don't even notice, live their own routines with set times to wake up, work, and sleep. And to show this clearly, I spent an entire day inside the game closely following their lives. To give you an idea, a full day in Red Dead 2 lasts about 60 minutes in real life, so I spent over an hour watching these characters, recording every move, every pause, and every detail of their day. Today, I'm going to show you the amazing routine of the workers in Rhodes, from the moment they wake up to the end of their shift, each one playing their part inside the town's cotton factory. Then we'll meet a lonely farmer from New Hanover who lives one of the most emotional and mysterious stories in the whole game. A story that, just like Rhodes' dog, fewer than 10% of players actually know about. And to wrap it up, I followed none other than Simon Pearson, the Vanderlinde gang's cook. I tracked him step by step while he prepared the gang's famous stew, showing the whole process, from prepping the meats to when the food is served. Have you ever wondered what happens if the camp's supplies run low? Does Pearson work less? Does he cook differently? Or does the stew's final result change somehow? These are questions a lot of people have, and I decided to answer them in this video by closely observing his full routine in 2 different scenarios. So let's dive into this journey through the living, detailed world of Red Dead 2. To kick off this video about the daily routine of NPCs, I picked a pretty interesting topic: the workers of Rhodes, more specifically those at the cotton factory near the sheriff's office and the town saloon. What a lot of people don't realize is that these NPCs actually follow a full work schedule with set hours and specific duties. To show this, I decided to follow 2 of them, and to make it easier to explain, I named them Adam and Peter. Both live in this small village next to town, inhabited only by factory workers. In the early morning, you can find Adam sleeping right in front of this door, which basically serves as his bed since the village houses don't have developed interiors. Around 6 in the morning, he wakes up and starts heading to the factory, which is just a few minutes away. Along with the other workers, he arrives at the place around 7 a.m. And the first thing he does is go straight to the stable since he's in charge of the horses. There, Adam lights a cigarette and enjoys the last few quiet minutes before his shift starts, since his shift begins around 8:20. From that point on, he starts his first task of the day, moving and organizing the hay bales. He grabs several and distributes them around different spots in the stable, getting everything ready for the horses' feeding. Adam sticks to this routine from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, 6 straight hours of hard work without a single break to use the bathroom or smoke a cigarette. Meanwhile, Peter, the other factory worker, is on the cotton production line. He starts his day alongside Adam, also around 8 in the morning, and hasn't stopped since. His job is to grab the wool baskets and carry them up to the second floor of the factory, where this huge processing machine is. That's where Peter dumps all the contents, and here's a crazy detail. Notice how the wool actually disappears inside the machine and the NPC leaves the factory with the basket completely empty. This is the kind of detail only Rockstar would bother programming. With the empty basket, Peter leaves the factory and walks over to the structure next to the stable, where he drops off the basket and repeats the cycle. He grabs another, takes it upstairs, feeds the machine, and starts the process all over again dozens of times throughout the day. While Peter keeps going back and forth non-stop, Adam finishes the first part of his shift at 2:35 p.m. wrapping up the hay transport. Right after that, he heads to the factory, grabs a broom, and starts the second part of his day, which is cleaning. For 4 hours and 25 minutes, he sweeps the floor, covering at least 4 different spots around the property, never stopping, sweeping like the bosses are watching over his shoulder. He only finishes at 7 p.m., puts the broom back, and goes to a bucket of water next to the stable, where he washes his sweaty face after 11 straight hours of work. While Adam is cooling off, Peter keeps going strong, finishing the last baskets around 7:20 p.m. And the curious thing is that, unlike Adam, Peter spends the whole day doing the same job. He spent 11 hours just loading and unloading wool baskets without stopping for even a second. And let's be honest, you've got to have saint-like patience to put up with that. When the shift finally ends around 7:30, both of them leave the factory and head back to the village, where the other workers are already gathered around the fire, drinking beer and chatting in a really relaxed vibe. Adam is a bit more reserved. He shows up around 9:20 and goes straight to the door where he sleeps, lying down right away to catch some sleep and get ready for the next workday. I just think it's insane for the guy to work himself to the bone all day and then when it's time to sleep have to listen to some dude next door playing the harmonica all night long. Peter is the complete opposite of Adam. He gets to the village and goes straight for a beer, and it's not even cold. It's that warm beer you get when the freezer breaks. After a few good sips, he joins the others around the campfire, enjoying the sound of the harmonica while poor Adam tries to sleep. Peter stays there until midnight when he finally gets up and heads home, sitting on that chair in front of the door. That chair, just like Adam's door, serves as a bed, since, like I said, none of the houses have modeled interiors. So when they're at these spots, the game understands they're sleeping. Overall, it took me about 2 hours inside the game to follow this whole routine, and I was really impressed. I didn't think these NPCs followed such a detailed schedule, and the craziest part is that you can repeat the observation any day and they'll do exactly the same thing at the same time. Keep in mind, we're talking about a 2018 game, so just imagine what's coming with GTA 6 in 2026. I can't wait to see the level of realism they're gonna bring. Leaving the busy town of Rhodes, we head out to a remote farm in New Hanover near Emerald Ranch. This NPC has one of the most curious and interesting routines in the entire game. The farmer's routine is one of the most unique in the game. Very few people know it, mainly because the man is aggressive. If Arthur gets close to the property and is spotted, the farmer immediately turns hostile, pulls out his gun, and forces the player to leave. This makes it almost impossible to follow his routine normally. That's why we're going to use a free camera mod which lets us watch everything up close without being detected, so let's check it out. Arriving around 5:30 in the morning, we find the farmer sleeping alone in a double bed, which is already kind of curious by itself. He wakes up around 6, gets up, and goes straight to the table in the middle of the house where he grabs a newspaper. With the newspaper in hand, he goes back near the bed, sits on a chair, and starts reading the news. The funny thing is, he only reads for about 10 minutes and then stops. He probably realized he was reading yesterday's paper since it had been there since he went to sleep. That's rough, right? After that, he leaves the house for the first time and goes over to the yard where he takes a good piss on one of the trees on the property. Then he goes back inside and spends a few minutes looking out the window like he's waiting for someone to show up. But since no one comes, he gives up waiting and decides to get the day started for real. And nothing better than that than to hydrate. He goes to the bucket in front of the house and takes a few scoops of water. At 7:43 a.m., he grabs a bucket and starts working, drawing water from the well just a few meters away. With the bucket full, the rancher heads to the pen where his animals are and begins filling the goat's water trough. He repeats this task several times, going back and forth non-stop for about 3 hours straight. He only finishes this job at 9:19 a.m. Right after, he starts inspecting the pen carefully, checking everything out. He seems to be looking for spots to fix, and it doesn't take long before he grabs a hammer and starts repairing the structure. And here's where the first bug in the video happens. The rancher gets stuck in the gate, caught in a loop for several minutes. I waited to see if he'd free himself, but nothing. I ended up having to spawn Arthur to give him a little push and fix the issue. Since Rampage was set so everyone ignores Arthur, the rancher didn't even notice we were there. With the issue fixed, he moves on to his third task of the day, taking care of the goats. He grabs the pitchfork and starts spreading hay all over the pen, making sure there's food in every corner. He sticks with this job for an hour and 24 minutes, finishing up around 12:16 p.m. And since nobody's made of steel, the first thing he does afterward is take another leak. Then he heads back inside the house, but not to eat lunch, just to stare out the window again, hoping to see someone coming. When no one shows up, he drinks a bit more water and picks up the repeater rifle that's leaning against the wall next to the window. With the rifle in hand, he starts the second part of his day patrolling the property. He walks through almost every corner of the farm, stopping at several spots to look out over the valley and the landscape. This part of the routine is pretty calm, almost lonely since no intruders ever show up for him to deal with. But things start to get interesting when he reaches a tree that's all damaged, looking like it was struck by lightning. And right at the foot of this tree, there's a gravestone, the spot where someone was buried. At first, the rancher doesn't do anything, just keeps on with his patrol. He only takes another quick break to pee and then continues the patrol. When the clock hits 6 p.m., he starts rounding the animals back into the pen. He stands in front of the gate, and the goats, like they already know the drill, come back on their own to the property. Not all of them go into the pen, but most of them stay nearby. With the sun setting and the sky darkening around 8 at night, the rancher takes a detour. Before heading inside, he goes back to that tree again. This time he doesn't ignore the gravestone. He kneels in front of it and pays his respects to the person buried there. He stays kneeling for several minutes, mourning, reflecting, which reveals a lot about his personality and routine. The most accepted theory is that the person buried there is his wife, since the double bed and the house's layout suggest he didn't live alone. The tree struck by lightning might indicate the cause of death. Maybe during one of his patrols he was with her when the lightning hit, taking the life of the woman he loved, and honestly, that theory makes a lot of sense. He finishes the prayer around 8:20 p.m., stands up, and heads back inside. Then spends a few minutes on the roof watching the horizon and keeping watch with his rifle. He stays like that until about 11 p.m. when he ends his shift with, yep, another piss break. But instead of going straight to bed, he sits by the campfire, pulls out a knife, and just holds it silently. Doesn't do anything with the knife, no sharpening, no threatening anyone, just sits there with it in his hands. That makes you wonder if he's thinking about something darker, like taking his own life, though maybe that's pushing it a bit. Around 12:15 a.m., the farmer finally gets up. He goes inside and heads to bed. Before lying down, he sits there staring at the floor for a few minutes, like he's praying, meditating, or just thinking about his wife, until eventually he falls asleep and ends the day. For hours he worked, took care of the animals, patrolled, peed a ton, and visited the grave of the woman he loved. It's a sad yet fascinating routine, showing why Red Dead 2 is one of the most detailed games ever made. This farmer doesn't have a mission, no dialogue with Arthur. Still, Rockstar created a full story for him, the loss of his wife, the loneliness, and the weight of his routine. And like I showed, it's almost impossible to see all this without mods, since he turns hostile as soon as he spots the player. With the NPCs' routines covered, it's time to talk about the Van der Linde gang's cook. A lot of people in the camp have roles, but Pearson's is definitely one of the most important, since he's the one responsible for feeding everyone. And to get a better understanding of how he manages that logistics, I followed the guy around for a whole day in the game. Pearson's day starts around 6:30 in the morning, and as soon as he wakes up, he heads straight to the campfire, where he grabs the pot used to make the stews, placing it next to the so-called kitchen. After that, he goes over to the social fire, where he sits for an hour and 10 minutes just staring at the fire. John even shows up there having coffee, but the two don't say a word, they just stand there staring at the flames. At 8 o'clock sharp, Pearson gets up and heads to the back of the camp, where he takes a good leak on the tree behind Abigail's tent. I can only imagine the smell of piss that must be there afterward. But hey, everyone's got their own issues. After that, he goes to the camp table, stays there a few minutes, rolling a fat joint and smoking until around 8:40 in the morning. Meanwhile, he wanders a bit around the camp, stops to check out the valley, and just enjoys the start of the day nice and easy. It's only at 9:30 that he finally gets to work on the stew. He heads to the tent and starts sharpening his knife, the one he'll use later to prep the meat. With the knife ready at 9:53, he heads to the kitchen, grabs a rabbit meat and starts cutting it to put in the stew. And here's an important detail: he took a couple of leaks in the morning and didn't wash his hands before preparing the food. Check out the nasty chef the gang's got. From here, he gets into a cycle that lasts for hours, cuts the meat, takes it to the pot, takes a drag from his cigarette, and repeats the process. The only variation is the type of meat, which switches between rabbit, deer, and others. While prepping everything, he also stops by the fire around 10:30, adjusting the flames to make sure they're strong enough to cook the stew. After that, he goes back to cutting more meat, takes a few more smoke breaks, then drinks a sip of whiskey from his flask. In total, Pearson spends 3 hours and 4 minutes preparing the stew that will be served to the gang, finishing the meat prep at 12:47 p.m. when he finally puts the pot on the fire. From this point on, most of his routine is done. From now on, Pearson just roams around the camp, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and every now and then he goes back to the cauldron to stir the stew and make sure everything's cooking right. A curious detail is that in the middle of these comings and goings, he even gets drunk, staggering around the camp. Pearson's work ethic really deserves some applause. The stew is actually ready to be served around 2 in the afternoon more or less, but for some strange reason, he only announces it's ready at 4:50. I found that curious because I always had the impression he announced it earlier, so to confirm, I followed him for 2 days, and both times he announced the stew around 4 in the afternoon. Actually, while I'm at it, I followed Pearson for 48 hours in the game across 2 different scenarios. One with the camp supplies full and another with them running low. I wanted to see if that changed his routine in any way. Maybe him working less, cooking less, or mixing up the recipe, who knows? But in both cases, everything happened exactly the same. The only difference is the effect of the stew. You know, when the camp supplies are high, we restocked or gave Pearson meat? Well, in this scenario, the player gets the gold health fortification. But if the supplies are low, there's no bonus. So the stew is the same, but the outcome changes depending on the camp's status. Back to Pearson's routine. After announcing the stew, he keeps wandering around the camp. That cycle of drinking, smoking, and admiring the valley view. Then something pretty interesting happens at 5:23 p.m. He walks over to his bed, grabs an object, and heads to a rock at the edge of the camp where he sits down facing the sunset. And that object, to my surprise, turns out to be a musical instrument. I was shocked when I saw it because in over 1500 hours of gameplay I had never seen Pearson play anything, but after digging a bit I found out the instrument isn't a harmonica, it's actually a concertina, a type of accordion that originated in Germany. Pearson plays the instrument for more than 2 hours straight, soaking in the sunset and the incredible valley view. He only stops when the sun completely disappears around 7:30 at night. After that he puts the concertina back, grabs a bowl, and goes to enjoy his own stew, a dish carefully cooked over 3 hours, seasoned with an irresistible taste of penis and urine. He eats the stew calmly for about 40 minutes, then just sits there chilling, looking at the camp and letting out some farts. Yep, that's right. The guy literally spends some time farting after dinner. It's only around 10 p.m. that he decides to get up. walks over to his tent, and lies down to sleep, ending the day alongside Susan and Strauss, his roommates. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the daily routine of Simon Pearson, the cook of the Van der Linde gang. It's impressive the level of detail Rockstar put even into secondary characters. Pearson doesn't have a mission, no direct dialogue that changes the story's course, but still has a full routine that happens whether the player is watching or not. This has always been one of Rockstar's biggest goals, to make the world feel alive, dynamic, and realistic. I remember an interview, I think it was Dan Houser, where he said one of the team's main aims was to keep the depth and realism of the characters even outside of missions. And honestly, they nailed it, because everyone in the camp in a way has their role. Pearson is responsible for the food, Susan takes care of cleaning, and also manages Tilly, Mary Beth, and Karen, who handle the camp's day to day. But what about the other gang members? What do Dutch, Micah, and the rest of the crew get up to throughout the day? If you're curious to find out, drop a like on this video and leave a comment asking me to bring you the continuation of the NPC routines. Meanwhile, think you know everything about the Aberdeen family? Get ready, because by clicking here on the yellow arrow, you'll dive into one of the most disturbing mysteries in the game. In this video, you'll uncover 30 dark and surprising secrets you probably never noticed. From hidden rooms and weird details to creepy theories and obscure facts, get ready to explore the darkest side of this mysterious family in Red Dead Redemption 2. We'll see each other in a few seconds, so big hugs to everyone and see you soon. Bye.